So, let's talk about Nevermoor, the Trials of Morrigan Crow. This is Jessica Townsend's first novel, and it has amassed quite a cult following. In fact, if you're watching this and haven't already read it, will be a spoiler-free section only delving as deep as the second chapter, right after this, before we get into spoilers. If you have read it, you could skip those first two spoiler-free chapters, section, whatever you want to call it, or just watch through the entire thing. Also, this is the first video I put out on this channel, so please do realize that this is not at all good quality compared to what I hope to make. And if you wish for any books to be reviewed, I'll see what I can do. Just put something down in the comments. Alright. The intro's over with. Let's get into the very first section of this book. It begins with, outside of the prologue, a pretty good line. The journalists arrived before the coffin did. This just gathers so much intrigue. It's like, what's with the coffin? Why are journalists coming? And, of course, spring of 1. What does that mean? I mean, you gotta assume it's 1 year after something, but what is it after? So, skipping ahead to the first chapter, and I'd like to note something else. Corvus means crow in Latin, so his name is literally Crow Crow. We get another very catchy, great first line. The kitchen cat was dead, and Morrigan was to blame. It does the same thing as the previous line. It generates, like, conflict because what's happening? Why is the kitchen cat dead? And why is Morrigan to blame? And the chapter title, The Cursed Crow, especially considering that the previous prologue had a person named Corvus Crow lamenting about the loss of his daughter, you have to wonder, what's up with that? So skipping ahead a bit, we get to this line on page 2. She glanced sideways at Morgan. I liked that cat. So did I, said Morgan. Oh yes, I can see that. There was a bitter note in her voice, and Morgan noticed she was backing away, inch by wary inch. Go on now, inside. They're waiting for you in his office. Morgan hurried into the house, hovering for a moment near the door from the kitchen to the hallway. She watched Cook, who was the other person in this conversation, take a piece of chalk and write kitchen cat dead on the blackboard at the end of a long list, most recently included spoiled fish, old heart attack, floods in North Prosper, and gravy stains on best tablecloth. So, this leads basically 2 questions to go right up. First of all, why is she responsible for all of this? And secondly, what meeting is she late to? So the first one that we get to learn is the second question. What's happening in that office? So without going into too much detail, she basically just has a caseworker that'll come to her every month and tell her all of the things that she's responsible of because of her curse. Answering this first one, why is she responsible for all of this, we figure out that she was born on a very special day, or in the eyes of the people in the Republic, a very unfortunate day. because she is to blame for pretty much everything. She is a cursed child, cursed to die on the first day of the first month of the first year of the next age, and she was born on the first year, the first month of, you get the point. And this is called eventide. She'll die exactly when eventide goes to morningtide, eventide being the very end of the last age, morningtide being the very first day of the first age. So, right at 12 o'clock, midnight, she'll die. And she was born 12 o'clock, or exactly at midnight, or earlier. The last stage. Don't ask why they aren't just killed after the one. It's a minor plot hole, but just don't worry about it. It doesn't really matter. So, that is chapter 1. So, back to it. Chapter 2, Bid Day, introduces pretty much everything in the book. Bid Day is this special event where basically children are bid on by adults and generally these adults are, just in general, any adult can, part of some sort of larger company or group. For example, we get people from animal emporiums or militaries, etc., 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 things like that, bidding on these children to oversee their education for the future, and, in consequence, bringing them into that line of work. So, it's Morrigan's birthday, and basically, she almost certainly has 1 year left to live, though some people are saying this is her last day to live. And she basically convinces her father, through an intermediary, his assistants, because he is the chancellor, as I've already mentioned. So, one of his assistants basically says, well, wouldn't it look good for you if you brought your daughter on her birthday to something special? And Corvus is like, good idea. So, that sets up the book, and it's pretty much as far as we can go without really getting into spoilers. And, quite honestly, the slowest moving part of it. Like, the rest of it is so fast, so just great in general. If you have not read this book, stop here, read the book, come back. And if you have, consume the rest of this video, like, comment, and subscribe. Yada, yada, yada. So we're stopping here, halfway through the second chapter before anything actually starts. I've left off the majority of the chapters, so if you want to go read it, I highly suggest you do go through those first 1.5 chapters, because you'll be missing out on a lot of just neat little things. But from this point onwards, be warned, there will be spoilers for the first book of the Morgan Crow series. Alright, it's spoiler time. So here we are, at bid day, with the bids being announced. So, Morgan obviously isn't expecting to get any. So, we go through a lot of bids. For example, Mrs. Ardith Asher of the Devereux Ladies' College, never heard of it, wishes to prevent her bid for the Lord Mayor trailed off for Miss Morgan Crow, which is one of the last bids. But for a more traditional, they would just say, for example, Major Jacob Jackerley of the Poisonwood School of Warfare, a military academy, wishes to present his bid to Michael Salisbury. But getting back to this one, it's very unusual because it's a place that no one has heard of, and they do this every year, and it's kind of assumed that the Lord Mayor, who is the person overseeing this ceremony, don't worry about him, he barely ever comes back, has, to some degree, read so many that he will remember and even potentially stay in contact with all of these places that are bidding for people. However, she gets one anonymous bid in addition to 3 which is incredibly high, 4 total bids. Even getting 2 is something remarked in the text as something that will only happen every few years. So, she basically plans in her head to say, I'm sorry, but I can't take it. I'm gonna die super soon. Moving on to chapter 3 now. Or, well, actually, the second half of chapter 2. I apologize for all these pauses and mistakes. This is unscripted, and I am going through this at the same rate that you are. So, there is one real bid, though. It's from the most powerful man in the country, Ezra Squall. So Ezra Squall basically says, hey, I can protect you from your curse. Join me. You can be my successor. And this is presented to her in the form of an intermediary, Mr. Jones. Of course, Mr. Jones isn't an intermediary at all, but we'll get to that when we get to that. So he basically just says, hey, do you want to be the most powerful person in the nation in the next 10 to 15 years? And she's like, cool. But then there comes a bit of conflict, which is really unfortunate. It's standard, he gave a tiny shrug on one shoulder. Every child commencing sponsored studies must also sign a contract and have a parent or guardian sign also. This is a problem because Corvus would never sign it, and her stepmother would never sign it, and her grandmother may or may not actually be considered legal. So, moving on, Corvus says, hey, they were all fake, your bids. And it turns out they were, which is, really unfortunate. Except, obviously, Mr. Jones isn't. Mr. Jones is real. Mr. Jones, just showed up. So, what's up with that? And Morgan turns around because it's like, he's right there. Right. And you can't see him. So what's up with that? the end, she just goes home. An envelope slides under her door. It says, Jupiter North of the Wanderers Society, who was the anonymous donor, wishes to present his bid for Miss Morrigan Crow. Again. Now she signs it and then burns it because she knows she can't do anything with it. But signing it was all she needed. So, from here on out, we'll go faster, starting with Chapter 3. Okay. So, quick recap at this point. Morrigan Crow is cursed to die. Jupiter North says, hey, wanna come with me? After she gets 5 separate bids, of which only 2 were actually real. That's beside the point. And she now basically has a conflict. And then everything changed when the Eventide bell started ringing. So it's like, oh, you're gonna die now. Like, tonight. So she signs it, basically throws it into the fire, and she eats the dinner with her family. But Jupiter North, her patron at this point, says to basically come with me. He like just barges into her house while she's eating dinner and is like, come with me, I can save you. She's like, meh. He's like, come with me, you won't die. And she's like, cool, but I burned that contract. And he's like, oh, you mean this contract? And it's just a slightly singed contract. And her grandmother is like, that's illegal. Which they are in the Republic. And they are very noticeably, once we get further into the story, not in the Republic. But anyways, moving on, death comes 3 hours early, and they have to make a daring escape. And they end up by basically just going through the watchtower that has the Eventide bells and everything, so it, like, they should be going like this and then just crumple against it. Instead, they're like, wee. And they pop up right outside the borders of the Free State. So, Jupiter basically fakes credentials to get in. For Morrigan, of course, he is a citizen. Cut that out. Bad cat. And she tries to just be regular until the dinner, which is very hard, considering that in between now and the welcoming feast, they jump off buildings, celebrate the start of a new age, she's not dead, all of these things. When she gets to it, she meets up with Hawthorne. He's going to be the 3rd main character in this book, behind Morrigan herself and Jupiter. So, he's a trickster and he pulls tricks. But Morrigan is getting bullied by these kids, like Noel and, assumedly, Cadence. And Cadence is laughing at her when Noel gets absolutely just basically drenched by, I think it was Jello, just falling, and Hawthorne runs away laughing. So, Morrigan and Hawthorne basically form a bond that assumedly will last a lifetime. Moving on to the first trial. This is almost certainly the easiest for Morrigan. Just to be completely honest about it, it's by far the easiest. She encounters almost no difficulties, like she just has to admit her true fear. It takes, I believe, 3 shots. In the second one, honestly, you could see it as just a different version of what admittedly taken as in the end. And then she just has to basically figure out what to answer by making a really grandiose statement instead of just a simple fact. When asked the question, which was, when did a bunch of people die at, I want to call it Tiamat Square, but that's obviously not what it's called. I'm blanking, but you know what I mean if you're here at this point. So, Morrigan basically says, it was a very dark day and a very horrible day, and a bunch of people died, and it was very sad, other than just say, it was blah 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 of the blah age. So, she passes it easily, almost with flying colors, but she notices 2 girls who were assumedly doing very well in their preparation for the second phase of the first trial, run out sobbing like, we don't know anything. So she's like, that's weird, and that's the first trial. Please note that I'm basically just focusing on the trials here, so I will be leaving out a lot for the sake of time. So, the chase trial, and very quickly, what happened between it was basically Morrigan formed closer bonds with Jack and Hawthorne. And that's about it. She also learned some stuff about Jack, mainly that he is basically a seer that can see into those that read the cosmere, the cognitive realm, but in this place, basically he can see into the world of memories and of feelings and things like that. This realm of basically memories and emotions. And that's gonna set up something nice at the end. But going to the trial itself, it's going very smoothly. Like, she just knows what she has to do. She knows she can do it easily. She has a super good, super fast, and super intelligent Mount and Fen. But then Noelle says, I'm going for gold. And she's breaking attire rules, which is all white, by wearing a tiny little ribbon of gold in her hair. And then the people running it say, hey, there are these 10 golden targets. Good luck. 5 of them are obvious, 5 of them are not. So, Morgan's Mount Fen, which again is an intelligent giant cat, like, ain't we doing that? So, Morrigan is planning with Fen to just take one of the easy ones, but this doesn't end up working out because Fen's like, ain't we doing that? And she's an intelligent cat. She'll do whatever she wants. So it's going smoothly. In fact, it's like, oh, she is gonna get it super easily. Until Cadence, the person in the first trial, slips and falls off their mount, and Morrigan says she's gonna die in the stampede. So she picks her up and continues riding, but as she gets there, Cadence climbs over her and slaps the target before her. So, oh no, she's eliminated because that was one of the last targets because it was so far in. And another minor storyline, a guy called Inspector Finn, or whatever his name was, keeps on showing up because Morgan's an illegal immigrant, basically. And he's like, "Hi, I've got you now." The Wonders official says, "Hey, sorry, we know your situation is weird, so we missed someone with a violation of the rules that ended up getting target, so you are in because we have an empty spot." So we got to the third trial, but in between then and the Chase and Sprite trial, basically we just have Hollowness and another cool setup for the rest of the series. So in the Fright trial, everything is going basically fine. Morgan is figuring out what she's supposed to do pretty easily. But then she and Hawthorne, who she was in the trial with because of how it was set up, are like, "No, we're supposed to go this way, but no, we're supposed to go this way. No, we're supposed to follow that light. No, we're supposed to follow this light," and so on and so forth, until Cadence, again, just like, "You're supposed to go your separate ways." So Hawthorne's like, "Cool," but Morgan's like, "I should think about that," but Cadence pushes her into the lake, so it's like, sploosh. And Morgan faces her fears, basically, which is her being found out, and also Ezra Squall. And then she meets up with Hawthorne. And then it basically happens again, except real this time, after the trial. And yeah, it's kind of a scary experience. So, moving on to the last trial. This is actually probably the easiest for Morgan. She just has to sit around and be anxious that Jupiter isn't going to make it. But he does, and basically just gives her a get out of jail free card, and that's it. That simple. It was a really fun and interesting way to end a story, because, like, how often do you just have a Deus Ex Machina that just sets up further problems down the line? Instead of just being a Deus Ex Machina, that's the story. Like, cut. And that's the final action of the story. So, Baz, who is Noelle and Cadence's basically mentor, protector, etc., and in a more legal sense, the person who's advocated for them to be put into the trials, and therefore assumes some responsibility over the caretaking of them for the time being. Like, she's an illegal immigrant, but Cadence, who knows that if Morgan is caught, she'll have to deal with Noelle over Morgan in the trials, because Noelle is in 10th place, basically, on the leaderboard, and Morgan is in the top 9, and only the top 9 make it in. Saves her by using her special ability, Mesmer, to mesmerize the people, including the inspector, into believing that she has her passport, when in reality she just has a random troll fight poster. And that's pretty much the end of the story. That's the climax, but we do have a bit more to still go. So, very end of the story now. She finds out what she actually is. She's basically the successor to this despised, evil creature, the Wondersmith. And pretty much, unfortunately, people don't take it that well. And Jupiter eventually shows her by basically imparting his powers on her briefly. And this is actually the resolution to one of the things set up earlier. Jupiter has the same powers as his nephew, so Jack knew since he saw Morgan, this power is basically activated. And she learns how to actually use the first wretched, though in reality it should be wondrous art, and calls on Nocturne, the very basic part where she just like has to sing and wonder appears, wonder just is there. It's not very difficult to do, but you can't do anything with it except for burn it away, which for Morgan is extremely useful because she's had this gigantic backlog being stored up for years and years. That's pretty much the end of the story. So, let's get to my thoughts on it. It was a really, really good story. It's just executed so well. And it's really great that the story of Nevermoor is continuing on for so many books after. If you just read Nevermoor and haven't read its sequels, go do that. Right now. I mean, right now. After you like, comment, and subscribe, just go ahead and do it. Like, seriously. It is a really good story, really good execution, really good premise, really good everything. I honestly can't find any big issues I have in the book. Except for perhaps its world building is a bit all over the place, but this is solved in following books by solidifying the world building a bit more besides just basically having a map in your head that you can think of what it looks like. So, it's Nevermore, The Trials of Morrigan Crow. One of the best starters to a series ever, arguably the best in the same genre as Harry Potter, since Harry Potter kickstarted the genre. Yeah, that's pretty much it.